Hello and welcome to NSF's Compliance Unlocked. I'm Sam Atkinson, and in our last episode we had Maria Callahan talking about the role of QP, and today we have Catherine Kay who's going to tell us all about the talent landscape when it comes to QPs and what we're doing in terms of skills and experience across the sector. Hi Catherine, lovely to see you.
Hi, great to be here, Sam.
We have this feature in the podcast where we ask the current speaker to ask a question for our next speaker, and as you're a QP and you've got a wealth of experience and you currently work at NSF looking after our training business, we had a question around that. And Marie particularly wanted to know about how the training programme has evolved over the years and what that means for trainees.
So the requirements to become a QP, the experience and the content of the QP study guide hasn't changed hugely over the years. Yes, there's been some adaptation and there's absolutely this need for experience in the real world. But what we have noticed is that actually the way that attendees want to receive and digest information has definitely changed. So, if we look at some of our attendees and, let's talk about Generation Z. So that's those that have been born between the late 1990s to the mid 2010s. I've got kids in that age group. And, the way that they're connected now to, constantly on social media, got everything at their fingertips, want to receive things in video format, short form, microlearning. And we've definitely seeing that people's attention spans are differing, changing,
yeah.
definitely
Shortening,
reduced,
I assume. Yeah.
definitely shortening. So we've had to really adapt in how we deliver our content whilst also making sure that people receive the information that they require. So, we've looked at a number of ways of doing that. Certainly, gone are the days when we ran the QP training a course every 2 years. People want to attend a course here and now. I'm ready to do a course on pharmaceutical microbiology. I don't want to wait 6 months. So as a result, we're delivering courses more frequently. And then the way we deliver courses, we're giving people options. Some people like to do in-person training, meet other delegates and the tutors face-to-face. Others like to have the virtual training requirements. So we do both. In all of our training, what's important is to build in real engagement, so interactive exercises, so using case studies, scenarios, teamworks, interaction, because this really helps people to learn and, they come away and learn more. So we do a lot of that in our courses. And if I take a moment to talk about the virtual offering, we've also noticed that we need to kind of take the blended approach as well. So somebody can be in a classroom, maybe in person for a day, that's fine. But in front of a computer screen for 8 hours, that
sounds
just
quite
too
a long
much.
time.
Yeah. So we've done an approach which is blended. So they're in the classroom, virtual classroom for half a day with the tutor, with the expert, doing interactive exercises. But there's also then an element of self-paced learning that they do before and after the course. So they're getting content online, they're looking at resources, they're looking at short videos, digesting that, and then they come into the classroom with the expert and then can apply what they've kind of learned themselves offline. When I say offline, looking within our learning management system, and then they apply that in the classroom through some interactive exercises as well.
That sounds really varied and responsive, I guess. And do you think that's possibly one of the reasons for the success of this particular course? I mean, it's been running for numerous years. I mean, what's your take on that? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the success of the course, we kind of do this arrangement and design for all of our courses. But the success of our QP course, we've had a long kind of legacy of training, over 30 years, and we've had a long-standing partnership with the University of Strathclyde, based in Glasgow. So not only do our QP courses meet the content of the study guide, but they're also taught at a master's level. So if attendees want to, they can go on and do some assessments, and then they can go on and get a postgraduate qualification. So either a certificate, a diploma, or a master's in pharmaceutical quality and good manufacturing practice. So that's kind of an additional sort of benefit if they do want to go on and do that.
Oh, that sounds quite good. And does that lead to a lot of engagement in those sort of academic pieces and therefore good outcomes for people?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly, we're also finding that for those that maybe their first degree qualification doesn't meet the criteria to become a QP, they've got this other route. They can do the masters with us, and then with that, they can go on and do the study and become eligible to become a QP. But also what we're finding with the virtual world that we now live in, whereas before maybe the majority of our attendees were UK and Europe, now with our virtual offering, we're getting a much wider attendees from across the globe. So, with the recent adoption of Annex 16 into PICS and the role of the authorised person, we're now seeing attendees from APAC regions coming along because, we cover that within our QP training, and they can also go on and do this postgraduate qualification. We've had attendees from the Asia regions that have then gone on and done either a certificate or diploma, so they can show their health authorities that they've attained a certain level of qualification and then become an authorised person.
So real benefits then for those taking the course. What I'm interested in as well is where people end up. I mean, for example, you're a QP, but you're more in operations. You're looking after this training programs and so on. What are the opportunities and what are the career prospects for somebody taking one of these courses?
Yeah, I mean, people can do all sorts of things. I think doing the QP training is a solid grounding and foundation for manufacturing pharmaceutical products safely and to appropriate quality, and of course within compliance to the rules and regulations. I mean, for myself, I actually started out, I'm a chemist, but I did a graduate trainee in manufacturing management. So actually went in to a global organisation and managed to I was very lucky, got a lot of experience in all types of different roles within supply chain, within technical, within operations. So really found my feet, and I really enjoyed actually the kind of working at the coalface in operations, dealing with the day-to-day challenges and issues, and looking to sort of problem solve and continuously improve. And then I saw this kind of opportunity to sort of move into quality and do some training and become a QP. So I went down that route, became eligible, and acted as a QP for a while. And so we kind of do, I think, when I was going through it, you kind of do sideways and upwards moves, as a career progression. And then I found really there was an opportunity that was just too good to turn down, which was within the UK, a company was building a brand new manufacturing and packaging facility, and they were looking for an operations director to head that up. So I kind of then moved out of my quality role back into an operations role. Because it was just a fantastic opportunity to be involved in the startup of a brand new organisation, recruitment of a workforce, putting in a quality system, putting in all of our equipment, and building and right up to then qualifying and then manufacturing product for the patient. So having had that QP background really helped me in that role. And also just working across the business, with all different stakeholders. Yeah. And I think ultimately then, once we got a license, I was named as the head of production on the license, the manufacturing license, but I was a QP. So I think also talking to the regulator when we would have inspections was really useful. Having kind of that background as a QP, not that I was acting as a QP, but obviously had been through that training and experience as a QP. So I'd seen kind of both sides, quality and operations, and knowing that to be successful, the two have to work
together.
Yes, absolutely.
Indeed. They don't always, but it definitely helps when they do. So what's your favourite moment then during that whole process, part of your career? I think just thinking about how we entice others into sort of that road and that pathway.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose for me, one of my sort of proudest moments, achievements, I suppose, was being involved in that startup from starting, and literally the production team was a team of one, myself, and we got to 100 recruiting, and we had a fully operational facility, and just kind of being involved in that whole growth. But also for me, it was building an environment and an opportunity for others then to be recruited, come into our organisation, and to see them learn and grow. So actually, when I was with that company, we then put together a kind of a career path for prospective QPs, and to sort of give them some background of, is this a path that they would like to follow? And then we had sort of criteria, some selection criteria, because we couldn't put everybody through that career path. But yeah, it was trying to really help develop people in their future careers was really rewarding for me.
And that sort of obviously resonates in terms of what you're doing now, I assume.
Yes, very much so. I mean, certainly within NSF, we run our QP training program, and part of that program and sort of some of the additional benefits that people gain if they do their training with us is they receive a tutor. So they have one-to-one tutoring sessions. So as well as the training courses, they can then have every 6 to 8 weeks a one-to-one session with a tutor, and I'm one of those people. And really it's an opportunity, a session for coaching and mentoring. So I really enjoy those sessions, meeting with our trainee QPs, really helping them with their training plan, give guidance on sort of tips and techniques for learning, because they have to learn a lot of information to regurgitate at the Viva, reviewing application form, and just helping them sort of, maybe thinking of other things that they could do to help fill the gaps in their experience plan. So that's something that I do very much now day to day in my current role.
Sounds really rewarding. Another topic which I had quite an interesting discussion with our previous guest actually was around QPs moving into leadership.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that? Do you think QPs make good leaders, or do you think that perhaps the technical and the leadership should be separate? I mean, I'm just wondering, because you obviously did a bit of both.
Moved into that. No, absolutely. I mean, it has a clear skill set. Now, to become a QP, one of the requirements isn't just the technical elements. Yes, you have to have set qualifications and experience and prove that you've got that knowledge criteria meeting the study guide. But, you do have to demonstrate kind of other skills, your other interpersonal skills. So it might mean that you don't have direct leadership, but you certainly have to be able to lead an organisation to change. You have to be able to communicate effectively, collaborate. You have to be able to influence. And then you absolutely need, critical thinking and risk-based decision-making. So there are, it depends on the individual. I mean, some individuals and QPs are very analytical. They like just to do the role of the QP, to be able to build and grow improvements and develop the pharmaceutical quality system, but they might not necessarily want to take that senior leadership role, and that's okay. We need people doing that.
Need both, I guess.
But it is a great role, as you say, for those that maybe do want to then take that step up into senior quality leader roles, or even, as I did, move into the operational area. Then having that foundation, that QP training, and certainly within our QP training, we do cover aspects of leadership skills within that, coaching and negotiation, as I said. So I think these are all important for anyone's career development, really.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think that, as you say, they're traits within many roles, I think, not just QPs and leadership. Just moving on, I mean, obviously the QP requirement and the work that a QP does is a legal requirement. Do you think there's a problem with the demographic or with the number of people within the sector doing QP work these days? Because it does seem like there's a reduction in terms of the availability of QPs, for example, and obviously that's leading to higher costs and so on. I mean, what's your view on the demographic generally and the shifting patterns we're seeing?
So, I mean, the role of the QP, is here to stay as far as we're aware. It's continuing on, and it's a definite requirement. And kind of certainly within the UK, the assessment of that has been delegated by the MHRA to the joint professional bodies. And it does take a long time. It does take a long time for people to go through that training. And before they even embark or make the decision to embark on the QP training, which can take 2 to 5 years, they've probably already been in industry for a minimum of 5 years anyway, gaining experience. So it does take a long time.
It's quite a commitment then.
It is a commitment. It's time and resource from the company as well to support the individual through that. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people coming through the training course, but then it's that last hurdle to complete all of the experience requirements, to complete the application form to then go forward for Viva. And I think maybe nowadays as well, people are moving companies a lot more as well. and there's a lot more startups, certainly in cell and gene therapy area. And so actually there is that, it's harder sometimes for people to gain that experience on a licensed site, because also to be eligible to go forward for your Viva, you need to have that minimum of 2 years experience on a licensed site. Whereas if somebody's working on a startup, it takes time to get to that. So, it does take time to build all of that experience. And I know from the joint professional bodies, there's not huge amounts of interviews that are carried out every month. So it is a worry to ensure that there's continuing
to say we're going to have enough
resource to support the industry. And I think that's where we then sometimes see, a lot of need for contract QPs, and then therefore those contract QPs maybe being on a number of different licenses.
Yes, it's difficult, isn't it? And I guess also we're seeing that the supply chain's becoming much more complex. The whole thing is changing a little bit, and that must put additional pressures on the trainee QP.
Yeah.
How does that work for them?
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days. I know when I did my training and speaking to colleagues, there were these kind of super sites that you had that, somebody could join a company and it would be a large global company, and there would be on one site, there would be, active substance manufacturing, drug product, maybe some research, R&D, you had your commercial teams, you had your regulatory teams, and it was great because the trainee QP could be seconded from department to department to gain that experience. And nowadays, that's not really the case. Our supply chains are far more complex. Many companies are importing APIs. Then you might have the bulk manufacture done in a facility in Europe, and then it's coming to the UK, for example, for final packaging and QP certification. So there's lots of players involved, or you may be a company maybe contracting out to a contract manufacturer lots of the or a testing laboratory a lot of the work. Or in some cases, you have completely virtual companies where there's the QP required for that final batch certification, but all of those other activities are contracted out and therefore need rigorous oversight. So the QP's got to gain a lot of experience in all of these different areas. And sometimes if they're only working on a site that only has, only kind of focuses on one particular area, they've got to find ways of gaining that experience. And so they do that. We advise them, make sure that, you can do audits, go and do some site visits, gain contacts, connections, build your network through your QP training, meet other people, build your network so that you can then actually go on and visit those other sites and gain that additional experience and knowledge. And wherever possible, yes, try and get secondments to different areas just to get that breadth of experience and knowledge. But it is difficult. The network thing is important. We do encourage people, if they can come to an in-person training event, that's a good opportunity to meet people, make some connections. And I know from my own experience, I did my QP training now over 20 years ago, and I still have connections with those that I did my training with. It's the pharmaceutical industry is a small world, and the QP world is even smaller.
Yeah, and it's interesting you're reflecting on that sort of community base of QPs, and actually that's something that we sort of reflected on with Marie as well, actually, in the last podcast. So it's a really important aspect, I think, that both supports the training but also actually the ongoing element as well, doesn't it, when you're actually out there doing that work. The other thing that's interesting here is that obviously we're talking about complexity with supply chains, and we're also talking about perhaps diminishing resource over time. If you put those two things together, then what you normally see obviously is effectively your demand is going to increase because you've got a lower level of resource and things are more difficult. Yeah. So presumably that also drives up things like salaries and makes that difficult. So, where does that sit with the whole landscape? Yeah. I mean, how does that work? Is that,
Yes, it's a really good question and a good point. And certainly when I've been talking to colleagues, not only actually in the pharma industry, but in other industries as well, certainly what we're seeing is graduates are coming out of university and they have really high expectations
on salaries
and on just on their jobs and on their career progression and therefore their salaries. So certainly on talking to colleagues in, say, other companies, graduates seem to come in and feel that they want to be on their career trajectory on a much tighter timeline than maybe you and I when we went, kind of started out in our careers. So there is really this expectation that they want to progress, whereas I think I touched on it before, maybe for many others, it's let's gain some experience and knowledge, let's do a role, let's do some sideways steps to gain further knowledge, and then we go upwards and career progress. But there is definitely, I think, with the younger generation, this desire that I've now done 2 years, what's next for me? I want to progress, I want to move on. So we've got that already, I think, regardless of what industry you work in. And then I think within our industry and the role of the QP, that's even more so. There's, as I mentioned before, there's all these years that you're putting in to train. You then qualify. You've now got this, what's seen as the golden ticket to be, a QP. And sometimes then people are, tempted to straight away maybe jump to another organisation or even jump to contracting because they see these higher salaries. But I think I just would urge people, just be cautious. You need to, even once you've got that eligibility, it's all about building your experience and knowledge and before sort of jumping straight into thinking, well, I now need to, I want to, earn more money. But there is demand out there and there are higher salaries out there. And also, I suppose it depends, for people, when I look back on my own career, sometimes opportunities come and we can't pass them by either. I had an opportunity to move, as I mentioned, into this operational role, back into an operational role to head up the kind of build of a new facility. And that was, at the time, an opportunity that was too good to turn down. It was a big, I had a lot of foundational knowledge, but it was still a scary move to do something like that. And I moved my family 300 miles south, a young family, and had a stressful job. But it was actually an opportunity that sometimes we just have to go with those. But I was doing it more for the career rather than for the money. It was really the opportunity to gain that experience and to be involved in something very exciting. And so I'd urge people to do the same.
To do the same, yeah, because I guess there's quite a lot of risk in terms of the job that yes. people are undertaking, responsibility Absolutely. Associated with that. So it's
exactly
it's although ambition is great, we
yes.
have to be cautious, I guess, to some degree anyway. So finally, I just want to ask you, are there top tips, great bits of advice, or anything else that you would sort of advise or provide to perhaps prospective or even established QPs? I mean, just from your experience.
I would say for prospective QPs, don't rush it.
Yeah.
Take time to gain experience. Build that knowledge and that breadth of knowledge, and really build your network, build relations, and build networks, because that will put will support you throughout your career. And for established QPs, I would say never stop your learning journey. There is always something new to learn. We have to do continuous professional development anyway, but continue on that learning journey. Continue gaining more experience, and also continue with those networks that you've got. But most importantly, I would urge the established QPs to support the new and future, the new QPs of the future.
Yeah, great place to finish there. Thank you so much, Catherine. It's been a great episode, and really enjoyed speaking to you about the QP landscape. This has been Compliance Unlocked. I'm Sam Atkinson, and our final episode of the season. So we'll see you again soon.